Mpho, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Some very serious words being used there in the allegations that you've made against those running the Robben Island Museum. Governance, issues around governance, nepotism and corruption that's now been taken to the highest office of the minister in charge of that department. Can you tell us shortly what the core of those allegations actually are?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, firstly, we would like, to welcome the statement, actually, from the minister by taking, actually, remedial action against all, the heist that has been taking place on Robben Island for the past 10 years. And, key to that, Robben Island, as you know, it's a sacred place. Where, our sweat and suffering actually, took part during the height of the struggle. So unfortunately, when we left that place, we said that place, should not be, a monument of our suffering, but it should be a place where people should learn about, how to confront pettiness and, to fight against evil, to turn evil things to be a triumph of, from evil to good things. So that surpassed what has happened on Robben Island. So the Robben Island management is corrupt to the core in such an extent that we have, the illegal, appointment, irregular, appointment of people without, necessarily, following the due course processes of appointments and the advertisement, And key to that, trampling on the legacy and the heritage of the ex-political prisoners, people, the world, when they descend to Robben Island, not only that they will go and see, Nelson Mandela cells. We've got 7 sections over the island. Now, all those sections, they've got historical and political narrative. So, unfortunately, that is not happening within the current management because all the political narrative of all the 7 sections, is not being told to the public. Who knows that Harry Gwala was in Robben Island? A lot of unsung heroes, their history is not being told. And it has been trampled on by one of the CHO, who happens to be a foreigner, and then, so arrogant and disrespectful and towards the ex-political prisoners. And then, we've got, Robben Island has produced presidents, judges, constitutional judges, advocates, business people. We have that capacity as ex-political prisoners to run that institution. You know what he did? The CFO of Robben Island, Mr. Pascal Tarovinga, he trampled on a very important item. There was the car that was donated to Madiba from Kosatu. That car should have been on exhibition on Robben Island. Now, he was seen driving the car with his family. Madiba's car. That man.
Okay. So if we try and get to the core of what is at issue here, you have raised issues of what to me sounds like issues of governance, yes, in terms of how somebody's been appointed. So there are very specific legalese that would be able to speak to that can be investigated, the paper trail and all of that can be followed. Yes. But it also sounds that you have a major issue with the direction of the museum, the yes, content of the museum, yes, and the history that yes, it decides to give a platform to. Have those issues, outside of your issues with how people are appointed, the issues around how it is run, the style that it's run, and more importantly, the history that it portrays. Have you raised that within the structure of the board, in as much as the EPPA is, I would assume, is a stakeholder within the Robben Island Museum? Have you raised it with them?
Yes, so many times that we have raised these issues of saying, you guys, you are doing these things wrong. For instance, a political narrative of the sections. Now, Robben Island Museum wants to come with their own political narrative. These people are not political prisoners. So they might be lying to the visitors. For instance, you know, it's very much painful that some of the artifacts that were there on the island, you can't see them currently. And when we, you know, confront the CHO, Mr. Pascal Taravinga, so many times that we are saying, you must change the following items. We want the audit of all the artifacts of the political prisoners on Robben Island. And, you know, it is a World Heritage Site under UNESCO.
Yes.
The association is now contemplating of, you know, talking to directly to the UNESCO, you see, and then saying, you know, the status of Robben Island to be a museum, it should be reviewed under the current leadership that is corrupt.
Now, the RIM has sent out a press statement. They say in here, in the statement, that your issues have not been brought up with them. And then there are a few things, and the statement goes on for quite a few pages. Point number 7 says that the RIM is mandated to ensure that its operations and management of the island are cognizant of all the layers of its history, and that it does not inadvertently foreground one layer at the expense of another layer of the history. And it continues, it should be noted that the Robben Island is no longer a prison, but a museum. But so by the sounds of the statement, they're trying to say that they can not only listen to what direction the EPPA wants to take, and that they also have to take on board the needs and wants of the other stakeholders. And they point out that not all ex-political prisoners belong to the EPPA, and they need to give those voices a platform as well. What is your response to that?
That is malicious lies, actually. I don't know where did they, you know, where does that originate? It's just a blatant lie by the chairperson of the board, who's corrupt to the core. I mean, all the ex-political prisoners, this association, you know, it represents diverse liberation movements, you know, of all the political organizations that fought against the racist regime during the height of the struggle. And it was formed by Madiba himself and, you know, the high command of Mkhonto Sizwe. And it represents, you know, the PAC. It represents Azapo. It represents Kibla. It represents MK. Now, within the structures of the association, we have all these members. So I don't know where did he get that all the political prisoners. Maybe it is those that are sitting in the board who are corrupt. One of them, it is Andile Mpalwa, who was, you know, irregularly appointed to do a project on Robben Island, but he sits on the board. How can you appoint a person who's sitting on the board and give him a contract on Robben Island?
And that again speaks to your allegations of lack of governance
yes.
as well. Now, Paul, we need to leave it there, unfortunately, but the independent investigation of the ministry, of course, will be kept an eye on as well.
We also call on the minister to immediately suspend and dissolve the board, suspend the CEO, Mavadada, and therefore dissolve the board.
Until this investigation can run its course.
Yes, because they cannot continue to work while there is an investigation.
Okay, we need to leave it there. The National Deputy Secretary of the Ex-Political Prisoners Association, Mr. Mpho Masimola, thank you so much for coming in this afternoon. We continue to get reaction on this story, though. We're joined on the line by the chairperson of the Robben Island Museum Council, Mr. Sibusiso Buthelezi. Mr. Buthelezi, thank you so much for joining us. I do hope that you've heard quite a bit of the interview that we've just done with Mpho Masimola from the EPPA.